Hi guys, Bill McGrath here from Picket Church International. With the Picket Church Summer Camp coming up and our use of knives as outdoor tools during that camp, I thought I'd go over my EDC knives, my everyday carry knives, and explain why I carry them and why I chose them. The first knife here is a folder from Spyderco. It's their Mannex model. They no longer make this particular model, but the Chinook is very similar. It's a 3.9-inch blade, 5/32 stock, so pretty thick stock for a small folder. G10 handle with steel liners and a nice thick steel bolster and lock back here, or midpoint lock. This is the strongest lock that Spyderco makes. As you can see, the stock there and the lock mechanism is very strong. I like Spyderco's as my left-hand knife. As a peace officer, I carry a firearm on and off duty with in my left side, and I like to carry my pocket knife on my left side. That, God forbid, I get into a defensive situation where I'm wrestling around with someone for control of my firearm. I can pull out my knife and use it as a gun retention tool. And with that large hole in the Spyderco, I have a better chance of opening it with my left hand, which is not as good as my right, obviously, than, say, a thumb stud knife or whatnot. I like to have one serrated knife on me for cutting fibrous materials or hard plastics like cable ties. And this is a good knife. For many years, I just carried two folders on me. And this was my, let's say, my clean knife for if I wanted to cut food or whatnot and the steak knife in the restaurant wasn't doing its job, I'd pull this thing out. But I like this knife in general. It's a good, solid, small folder. Well, small for me. The reason I consider that a small knife is my other knife is a cold steel 2XL Voyager. This is my dirty knife, and the reason I think of it that is I'm working in the yard, mowing the lawn and whatnot, and vines or branches are growing through my fence. I'll go ahead and just whip this out, cut them, and not have to go back in to get some dedicated tool for the job. 6-inch blade, thick stock for this blade length. It's not too thin. It's VG1 stainless steel. I had their previous model, which was AUS8. AUS8 is 0.7% carbon. The new VG1 is 1% carbon. And to give you a comparison, the K-Bar knife uses 1095 steel, which is also 1% carbon. And I was having some problem with the older version. The edge would roll on me. I had the serrated version. And I blamed it on the lower carbon content of the steel in the AUS8 version. But I've spoken to some people in the knife industry, including someone who used to work for Cold Steel, and they told me that the steel was not the problem, it's the serrations. When they cut serrations in Asia, they tell me that the factories there tend to cut them when the knife is already hard. They tend to burn out the serrations, or have a tendency, the possibility of burning out the serrations. And that will lose a temper in the steel. So if you're going to get a serrated knife, go with an American manufacturer like Spyderco, and you won't have the problems with those serrations. I have not had any problem with this knife. I've rolled the edges on the serrated version, cutting small branches as thin as my finger. I've cut branches with one swipe as thick as my thumb, and gone through things as thick as my wrist with multiple chops with this knife, and not had any problems with the edge rolling. Keeps a good, long, strong edge. Because the handle is so long, 6-inch blade, but 7.5-inch handle, you can hold it way down here, and the point of percussion for your chop is fairly far. It's much longer than 6 inches of blade length from your hand, so you get a really nice bite here. You get a lot of bang for your buck with this knife as a folder. My other knife is a Fallkniven S1 forest knife. This is my camping knife, and specifically my food prep knife when camping. This is probably VG10 laminated steel. The VG10 is a very thin sandwich layer in the middle between more spring-tempered or spring steel edges on the sides here. So the side is a lower carbon content steel, which gives it a more spring temper. It's a tougher steel. And the edge, you can't see it probably on this video, but you can see a very small line, about 3/16 inch up from the cutting edge, and you can actually see where the lamination occurs. This is an incredibly tough knife. I've batoned 2-inch thick logs with this without any problem. Did stabbing tests into various types of wood, prying it out just to see if it would break. Very, very tough knife. If you go to the YouTube channels I subscribe to and look for a knife test, or go online to knifetest.com, you'll see the larger brother of this knife, the A1 from Fallkniven, literally beaten to death with a sledgehammer before it finally breaks. This is 3/16 steel. The A1 is a 1/4 inch. This, I believe, is what the cold steel SRK was designed after, but this is a much better knife in my opinion. There's a full tang here. It basically follows the contours of the handle that you see. The SRK it's a stick tang with very sharp 90-degree corners, right at where the tang meets the blade, and under stress there's a propensity for a fracture to occur right at that juncture and the blade to fail, where you will not run into this type of problem, or that type of problem on the Fallkniven, because there's no right angle there. It's a nice smooth curvature going down the blade. Very strong knife. I tend to like stainless steel for my outdoor knives for food prep. In this size blade, this is a 5-inch blade. When I go bigger in my Bowie knives, I like carbon steel. It's a tougher steel in general. But for food preparation, I like this. Chopping up my food, clean it, put it back in my Kydex sheath, and it's good to go. I know that if there's a little moisture left on there, it's not going to rust as a carbon steel would, a blade would if put away in a sheath slightly damp. If you do get a Fallkniven, get the Kydex sheath from the factory. I got the pretty leather sheath, and first time putting it in, put a nice rip in it. The blade was sharp and just whoosh, right through the sheath. So I had to make my own Kydex sheath. Not a problem, I have Kydex at home. I've made sheaths before, but if you're buying one, might as well get a Kydex sheath from the get-go. The Fallkniven goes for like 100, 110 on the internet. The Voyagers, the XXL Voyagers, going for around 65 now. But Cold Steel looks to be dropping this size from their line. So if you're looking to get this knife, I would get it now. The Matrix, the Mannex, is not made by Spyderco anymore, but the Chinook is very similar, and I think that's going for $1 1/4, $1.35. Anyway, these are my knives, my everyday carry knives. I hope you've enjoyed the review. I plan to do more in the future. Bye now.